Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'm discussing my thoughts on episode 5 of the anime series Violet Evergarden. And I was actually pretty surprised at how sweet this episode turned out to be. There were a couple of twists and turns that I didn't exactly see coming. I kind of started to formulate my own preconceptions as to where this could be going. I was really starting to think it's going to kind of be like a Cyrano de Bergerac kind of thing, where Violet was called in to write the love letters for the Princess Charlotte, and somehow or another she would end up interacting with this prince and whatever like that, and maybe he would set his eyes on Violet, and like I wasn't really sure where it was going to go, and I was also fearful and somewhat dismayed for like a majority of the episode, until the turning point when you find out Charlotte herself is actually excited about this marriage, this arrangement, since the age of 10, which is kind of weird. The guy's 20 and, she's 10 and whatever like that. As long as she's of adult age, the age gap doesn't really matter. But when she's only 10 years old and a 20-year-old, practically knows he's going to like marry her and whatever like that, it's just a little weird. But that's, that's the way it is and has been in some parts of the world all throughout history, whatever. I was really fearful, though, for her sake, for Charlotte's sake, thinking that maybe she didn't want any part of this. That is very much the impression they give you from the get-go. With how ornery and sort of crybaby, air quotes, she is, and she's not thrilled about the letters, and it turns out that her being unthrilled with them is more so because she can perceive these aren't his words. This is not coming from him. It's all the pomp and circumstance. And Violet, for her part, I've made this observation a few times over now, but she's very much, for her being the titular character, she's very much not in the focus usually. She's very much sort of relegated to the background, but she's somebody who is very interactive in the background. And by and large, each of these last few episodes, where we're focusing more on the drama surrounding someone else, a different character, very episodic in nature, is that, we have Violet seemingly off-screen developing and growing and moving closer and closer to that humanity that I'm really hoping to see more of, which comes across in this episode in how well written her letters are to the prince on behalf of Charlotte. And they're very poetic, and she's come quite a long way from where we even just found her in the previous episode. So I feel like we're missing elements of her growth and development, and I want to see more of that because she is supposed to be the main focused character. But I just, I did perceive a lot more growth. I mean, even by the end of the episode, when the other leg drops and everything is happily ever after, or happily burgeoning, between Charlotte and this prince whom she wants to marry, with his proposal to her in the moonlit garden, calling back to their very first encounter, is very poetic and beautiful. But I actually felt myself smile toward the end, not the very end. There's something post-credits that's completely off the wall. But at that point where Violet's kind of smiling and reflecting on the fact that, oh, it's a beautiful day for a wedding, that kind of thing. It made me smile because there is the humanity, I did say in my previous episode discussion video, and by the way, this video was a day late because I had a lot of stuff I needed to get to. But I had said in my previous week's video that, she's kind of in the background. She's almost, secondary to everything else. And I had said she really hasn't accomplished much. She doesn't have a lot of interactivity. And it wasn't so much that she didn't have interactivity. She is a very integral part to the growth and development and the overall drama of these surrounding characters, of setting them on the right path. While she is trying to find herself, she's steering other people along a better path for themselves as well, that kind of thing. But what I had meant was, it was lacking being focused on her. I mean, right now, here in this episode, we have much more development and drama surrounding Charlotte and her maidservant, who has basically been there since she was born. Literally, this was the woman, who took the baby out of her mother, who helped birth her. And I actually was sort of getting misty-eyed. We don't spend a whole hell of a lot of time with these characters. It's just one episode. But seeing the rapport and the care and compassion and concern between them, it's time for Charlotte to move on to grander, more adult things, forge a life and family of her own. And she's going to leave this woman behind who's been there for her all of her years, and especially when she bows down to her and takes her hand and rests her forehead on her hand. And the woman herself starts to get misty-eyed. I was getting misty-eyed. I was really moved by that emotional connectivity between them. And all the while, I got to say, too, the motif of the episode, Princess Charlotte, I was constantly thinking Princess Principal. I was just waiting for spy stuff to start happening. Guns getting fired and whatever like that. People sneaking around, snooping around. None of which happened, And neither really the whole Cyrano thing. Thankfully, gratefully, it didn't go anywhere near that at all. And I'm just, it could have been all kinds of cliche and annoying and mind-numbing, but it turned out to be a really sweet, heartening episode overall. The entirety of the story, the characters, these, largely what would have been sort of guest starring characters, if this were like a proper TV series, because they come in, it's very episodic in nature, much as the last few episodes have been, with that undercurrent of, Violet and the auto memoir dolls and her growth and development. So where I say it's off the wall at the very end, she gets back to her hometown or somewhere. They pull into port, and here's this guy who is demonically scathing. They said his name, but I didn't bother jotting it down. I'll pay more attention to what his name was in, next episode. Presumably he'll be largely involved in, he apparently has a real big chip on his shoulder because Violet allegedly slew his entire force, on a ship, on a boat. It's all stormy, kind of reminded me of the opening scene in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he's trying to get the cross of Coronado and lightning and thunder on the boat, and the boat ends up blowing up and everything like that. But we see Violet very bloody, a knife in hand. She has laid waste to his entire crew, however many people that was, however many guys. And he's incredulous. He's enraged and seething and incredulous. You are writing poetic letters to bring people together, romantic and all this stuff, these unions, and you're such a monster. You're evil. You are so bloodlustful and have killed so many, taken so many lives. And I'm just kind of sitting there, I enjoyed the whole episode. I really, really genuinely enjoyed it. Even the visuals, which I have talked about at length, have been somewhat crappy from time to time. This episode was spit and polished and relatively beautiful. Some of the animation was fluid and things like that, which I was just talking about in my review for Koiwa Miyagari no Yo ni, that episode for this week. This one was not as brightly colored. They still have a wash over every scene, like a filter. They really sort of dim it down a little bit. I don't know why, but it still looked pretty snazzy, by comparison for this show, this episode, the visuals. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. But then Violet gets off the boat. And she runs headlong into this guy who's all daggers. And I mean, it's like, what's he going to do? Choke her to death right then and there? And I'm just like, oh, you had to ruin a good thing. You had to ruin a good thing. I was enjoying the episode. And then you had to shoehorn in this bunch of malarkey, this bunch of melodrama. You couldn't wait till the next episode. It kind of serves as a cliffhanger ending, whatever like that. I guess most people are going to be, you know, like, oh my goodness, I got to tune in next week to find out what happens next. I was going to watch anyway. You know, it completely killed the buzz I was on with the heartwarming nature of, you know, lighthearted heartwarming nature of this episode. It was like a bold smack upside the head with a 2x4 with a nail sticking out. That ending, that post-credits ending. So, you know, by and large, I thought this was a sweet episode. It was really beautifully written. The characterization and everything, you know, I felt for Charlotte, even though I was constantly thinking Princess Principal. I was much more impressed with the development of Violet at this point. At least they are developing her. We're not really seeing it firsthand, but it is happening. And that answers to my sort of overarching want to at least see some growth and development. And then, like I say, I mean, it was almost a pitch-perfect episode. You know, viewing-wise, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was thoroughly engaged with it. And like I say, it even picked up that little extra want to see some development for Violet herself. The show is named after her. Why are all these other characters in the focus? I guess it's kind of like Kino's journey in a way, where she's not very much the focus of her own show. It's more episodic and the other mitigating circumstances and characters that are only there for one episode most of the time. And that's fine. The nature of that is fine. I don't really have that big of a deal. Now that I sort of wrapped my head around that's what's going on. But then watch. Next episode with the introduction of A-Hole trying to, you know, put the spikes to Violet for being an auto-memoir doll, writing about love and roses and all of that stuff. Next episode will probably be all focused on her and the hell that this guy is putting her through or something. Or one last fleeting thing that I had, the impression that I had with the way they end the episode, you know, his incredulity. I was like, oh, is he the new love interest? Is he the new sort of pseudo tsundere, you know, like, I hate you, but I'm going to love you, you know? I guess it remains to be seen. But at least this was a much more fun time watching the show than I would have expected. It turned out to be really well written, really well performed and everything. When Charlotte is crying, the voice actor, it just tore my heart out, you know, and such like that. I mean, this is as pitch perfect thus far, for my tastes, as this show has been able to achieve, you know, has been able to get up to. So with that, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 5 of Violet Evergarden. If you've seen it as well, if you enjoyed it as much as I did. If not, why not? Let me know that in the comments below. Any issues you had with it that, you know, I didn't particularly share or voice in this particular video. Always love having that conversation, even if our POVs happen to disagree, and you might have hated this episode. Maybe the growth and development was sorely lacking for you as far as Violet's concerned, whereas I thought it was, you know, about damn time to get something. But yeah, as I say, I'd love to hear from you, and otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.